Here we have a Blackstar HT Club 40, a very popular amp these days. It's got 2 preamp tubes, 2 EL34s, and a whole lot of solid state stuff doing most of the actual work. And these are pretty good amps for the price, as long as you expect it to be like a laptop or a cell phone, where after X amount of time you have to get another one. The pots are cheap. There's a lot of surface mount stuff on here. I'm sure Blackstar does not do component level repairs on these. They swap boards when they're in warranty. This is the 3rd time this particular amp has come in. The first time in February of 20. It came in, had a bad EL34, which had blown the HT fuse. I put a new pair of JJ EL34s in, replaced the 500 milliamp fuse, set the bias, sent it on its way. It came back in May of 21. Power's on, no sound. That was, again, the HT fuse had blown. One of the JJs failed, and I don't know whether that's anything happening in the amp or whether it's just the luck of the draw. Yeah, he got about a year, a little over a year out of the JJs, and one of them failed. So at that point, I changed out the fuse and put in a pair of Mullard EL34s, and that was in May, and it is back now in October, and it said made loud thump and powered off. So all the fuses, both the mains fuse and the HT fuse and the 3 board-mounted fuses, seem to be okay. So I'm going to power it on, and I've got my current limiter bulb engaged. So I'm going to power it on now, and we're going to watch and listen and see what happens. While it warms up, there's an oddity of the Blackstars. You won't have any real bias conditions or any real voltage on the output unless a guitar is plugged in. And if that circuit goes a little bit awry, weird things can happen with these things. I'm also a little bit concerned with these large value resistors that are kind of mounted on stilts. That can be a lot of stress for the solder joints, and given that the solder joints in these are by necessity lead-free, I've seen those kind of break loose, partially break. They seem okay from a visual exam though, so I'm going to take it out of standby. And I'm not getting any big current surges, so that's good. It's possible that the bias circuit in this thing detected an unusual current draw and shut everything down. I don't know. I was not there. It's also possible that this was just being played on a Memphis stage in a Memphis club, and the wall voltage exceeded 130 volts. That happens a lot around here. Anyway, let's get a guitar and plug it in, which will make the output section come to life, so to speak. Got all the knobs at noon, except for the high gain master, which is at about 9 o'clock. And the global master is also about 9 o'clock, so this shouldn't blast us out of the gate. Let's see where we're at. If I can get this guitar cable to cooperate. All right, here we go. So at least right now, when first powering it up, everything seems to be working just fine. It's not going to be a fuse. So whatever the problem was last time, it's unlikely to be the same problem. But, open mind. Let's see what the higher gain stuff sounds like. I don't see the front of the amp when I'm doing this. I'm just pushing a button and see what happens. That's a voicing on the clean. All right, so here's clean, overdrive, and an overdrive voicing. All right, but you hear that sound. That should not be there. And frustratingly, because of the design of these things, it goes away if I unplug from the input jack. And now it's gone. And now it's back. So let's keep the volume down on the guitar and time that. All right, so there's no signal. See if it comes back by itself or does it have to have signal. All right, that's not a good sound. What happens if I go into the effects loop return? Do I get anything? Now I'm going to have to plug something into the input to get that to work. Let me go back to the input and see if that's on both channels first. So go back to the clean channel. This is an odd one, isn't it? Yeah, you can hear that buzz come in, but that buzz only comes in, let's time it. 1, 2. About 3 seconds after you plug in, it comes in. And if we do that on the high gain, it's the same thing, it's just going to be much more audible. So, plugging it in. 1, 2, 3. All right. So the next question is that going to be something which is in the power supply or the preamp supply? So I'm going to plug something into the input just to trigger the bias, so we'll get some signal out of the output. It's going to sound terrible because this is just a speaker cable I had lying around. Yeah, that sounds really terrible. We'll turn that volume all the way down. Yeah, I can hear that sound. I'm going to go into effects return. And it goes away. Well, that's good. I was concerned that the sound we were hearing was somewhere in the bias supply, because the circuit that controls the bias in these things is very, very complicated. That's interesting. All right, if I ground out the grid of V2A, that's pin 2, that noise goes away. So it's before they're in the circuit. And on a more traditional amp, I'd be able just to follow it or just know where it is because from experience. But in this case, it's almost anyone's guess what is in front of that. And it's possible that what we're hearing there is a bad filter cap on that node. It's also possible that what we're hearing is a bad grid leak on that grid, that it doesn't have a good path to ground, which can cause similar things. It's also possible that there's leaking DC from a cap ahead of it. So I'm going to see if I can find the schematic, but I think I remember that Blackstar does not put the schematics out there. And then I'm going to do some experimenting and see what I can find. But this is why I do not like these amps. It'd be one thing if they said, and here's the schematic. But when they build things that are really cheap like this, and really convoluted like this, and then they get stingy with the schematics as if there's some trade secret here, that's bothersome. Well, I've got good news and bad news. I have found the source of the noise, I'm pretty sure. It's on both channels, much more prevalent on the gain channel. I have found the schematic for this amp though. And the signal goes through some ICs for the majority of the actual gain staging, and then goes to V1 for the clean channel and V2 for the dirty channel. Each channel gets 2 triodes of tube gain stage, then goes to the respective tone controls and everything else. And if I mute the grid of the first triode in each channel, the noise goes away, which tells me the noise is between the input and the tube. So the tube is not the issue, sadly, because that would be much easier. The issue is in either IC1, let me get the focus. Where's my pointer? It could be around IC1, it could be around IC2, or IC12. That's 6 gain stages in here before it gets to the tube. It could also be any of those electrolytic capacitors there associated with that, or some of those ceramic discs. Because all 3 of those op amps share the same power supply and the same filtering on that power supply. It could also be in the power supply, the plus minus 12 volts, and the filtering associated in that area. The power amp in, which is what I plugged into on the back, the effects return, which made the noise go away, bypasses all that and just goes to IC9 and then to the output tubes. Which means that the raw plus minus 12 volts, which the IC9 also shares, does not have this problem. So it is something local in this area.